The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, yet it remains one of the most mysterious and unexplored frontiers known to humanity. Deep beneath the crushing waves, hidden far away from the sun, lies a dark, freezing abyss. It is a place of crushing pressure, an absolute pitch black. Down here, history freezes in time. And today, we are going to uncover some of the deep sea's most shocking secrets that were never meant to be found. Deep in this terrifying dark abyss, a famous German World War II submarine, the legendary U-47, rested in frozen silence. For decades, it laid on the ocean floor, completely swallowed by the deep blue. Back in its prime, this vessel was an absolute nightmare for all ships. It was a terrifying, silent phantom across the entire Atlantic Ocean, striking fear into the hearts of sailors. But time and saltwater took their toll. After more than 80 long years, submerged in a highly corrosive environment, the ocean turned this once deadly war machine into nothing more than a massive pile of heavily rusted metal. It was locked in a frozen, watery grave, covered in thick layers of marine life and ocean debris, seemingly lost to history forever. That was until a team of absolutely crazy and dedicated engineers decided to push the limits of modern technology. They spent massive amounts of money and endless hours planning a nearly impossible mission to pull this historical nightmare straight up from the deadly depths. Slowly and carefully, diving teams approached the decaying hull, precisely connecting heavy-duty lifting fixtures. They knew that a single miscalculation, or one weak attachment point, could destroy the entire multi-million-dollar operation. As the giant industrial cables slowly began to tighten, the tension was unbelievable. Finally, the incredible lifting force overcame the mud, and hundreds of tons of rusted metal broke free from the ocean floor. After exactly 85 years in the dark, the massive submarine violently broke the surface of the water. The sheer scale of this underwater leviathan is absolutely hard to comprehend. When the engineers finally breached the outer hull, they found a dark time capsule sealed under thousands of pounds of pressure. The narrow, claustrophobic corridors where dozens of men once lived and fought were perfectly preserved in the freezing dark. Even the massive steel bulkheads, designed to withstand the crushing weight of the deep ocean, showed the incredible and terrifying engineering of a bygone era. A diver accidentally discovered a truck underwater, and its condition showed it had been in the sea for a very long time. By looking at the emblem, many can guess exactly what kind of machine this is. This truck had likely become a shelter for fish, but the condition of its parts indicated it wasn't simply thrown into the sea after breaking down. It looked more like a perfectly good vehicle that accidentally went underwater. Even after spending many years in saltwater, the truck still had an intact frame and a massive rear container. Jack decided to lift the machine to the surface to see if it could be restored using modern technology. The body was mostly covered in corals, which wouldn't severely affect the paint after a proper wash. The first lifting attempt failed because the strap snapped due to underestimating the vehicle's weight. Jack secured the truck again, and the crane slowly lifted it from the bottom and brought it to the surface. The overall condition was quite good, and since it fell near a pier, it was immediately placed on the dock. The truck likely rolled into the sea during loading because someone forgot to engage the parking brake. First, they used a high-pressure wash to knock off the loosely attached shells and growths. After 2.5 hours of preliminary washing, a crane moved the truck out of the port to be sent for professional restoration. A half-hour transport brought it to a large auto service center, capable of bringing this machine back to life. The truck was quickly moved into a repair bay, and since it was a typical flooded vehicle, almost the entire interior had to be replaced. Workers began stripping parts, as the engine had rusted from being in the water for so long, and several frameside members were seriously corroded. The frame is critically important for a heavy truck, so after a full diagnostic, the team organized a clear restoration plan. Different teams handled different zones, quickly dismantling the cabin, while girls in the shop started completely rewiring the electrical system. Soon, the truck was stripped down to a bare frame, which required manual welding and sanding because every damaged area was different. Fortunately, the engine was saved after a major overhaul, which kept the restoration cheaper than buying a new truck. The rest of the repairs involved extensive manual labor, including the restoration of the rear container, yielding a very worthy result. Workers sandblasted the frame to remove rust, ensuring it would look much better after a fresh coat of paint. In the dim light of the sea floor, tropical yellow fish swam around a rusted steel jungle that was actually an American heavy semi-truck with a trailer. Strangely, bubbles still escaped from its exhaust pipe, making it look if the steel beast was still breathing underwater. This road monster once drove down Route 66, but its body became covered in corals and shells, turning into a small underwater ecosystem. A group of extreme machinery fans used a floating crane to violently throw this wet pile of metal onto a barge. A yellow forklift then dragged the truck into a perfectly clean, snow-white workshop. Engineers immediately sprayed the body with a blue chemical foam that dissolved the deeply embedded shells with a harsh chemical hiss. A high-pressure wash then blasted away the thick layer of silt and algae. The real teardown began when workers used drills and hydraulic shears to relentlessly destroy rusted rivets and bolts, ripping off the bumper and hood. When the crane tried to lift the rear part of the heavily corroded cabin, the thin metal crumbled in the air like dry cookies. They smashed the algae-covered dashboard and pulled out the rotten wiring, tearing the former king of the highway entirely into pieces. When the engine and transmission were finally separated, a thick waterfall of brown sludge poured out instead of oil, staining the pristine white floor. Workers then sent the rusted frame into a red-lit sandblasting and painting booth. After lightning-fast operations, the ruined beam received a perfect glossy black coating. It became clear this wasn't just any truck, but a legendary Kenworth W900A. Under the hood was the heart of American roads, the famous inline six-cylinder Cummins diesel engine. The engine was completely disassembled, and hundreds of parts were laid out on a stainless steel table with maniacal precision. The cylinder block was sent into a green chemical bath, and then precisely machined on a massive CNC machine. Workers hammered new pistons into the cylinders and painted the entire motor in the signature Cummins champagne gold color. Next came the bodywork, where dents in the doors were filled with pink putty and polished to a near-perfect mirror finish. Finally, a fully geared painter covered the Kenworth in a blindingly bright yellow paint. Once polished, the clear coat reflected the workers perfectly, capturing the pure soul, power, and brutal aesthetic of the American semi-truck. During assembly, the golden Cummins engine was carefully placed back onto the shiny black frame. Red, blue, and green lines were perfectly routed, while chrome wheels and polished tanks took their places. The giant vertical exhaust pipes were reinstalled, and the interior was heavily upgraded. Expensive black carpet was laid over silver sound insulation, and vintage gauges were built into a brushed metal panel.